and that brings us to the end of the ROS talks for this version of ROSCon India. The last session that we have for the day is a panel discussion to sort of have an open Q&A as well as a discussion amongst the startups that we have here, speaking to what are the kind of issues that we as an Indian startup ecosystem in the deep tech or the robotics space face in general, and what are some of the challenges that we've already overcome or some that we look to overcome with the support of peer startups, government agencies, as well as incubations like ARPA. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. Have your questions ready and held together. Once the panelists are done with the initial discussion, we'll open up the panel for Q&A. Thank you. So to introduce our panelists for the day, we have Pranav Srinivasan from Open Robotics. We have Manish Jain from Flow Mobility. We have Pranshu Tople from Rigbeetle Labs. And our moderator for the day being Prateek Nagras from Acceleration Robotics. I think the applause can go a little louder, folks. Come on. It's the last session for the day. We have an amazing 2-day sessions throughout. So let's get this done with. Thank you.
Okay, so today is the last session of ROSCon India. Like 2 days went really quickly. I hope every one of you enjoyed. So let's just finish it up with a bang, hopefully. So this is not going to be a traditional panel where I'm going to ask questions. I'll just ask a couple of questions and we'll open it to a Q&A session. So feel free to ask questions related to startups. If you have any doubts on how to get started, we have 2 product companies here, 2 service companies here. So there's people from diverse backgrounds, people who have raised funds, who have already been doing well. They are in the market as well. So feel free to ask questions. So to start with, I'll just ask everyone to introduce themselves and give a short view of your journey from how you started the company and how it's doing now.
Hello. Cool. So my name is Pranav. I run this company called Open Robotics, and we primarily build mobile robots for order picking in warehouses. So we have 2 product lineups. One is an assisted picking robot, and another is a completely automated picking robot. So yeah, our job is basically to build mobile robots that aren't very common in the world, so as to say. So that's how our product lineups are. And personally, so both me and my co-founder, we are graduates from VIT Vellore. We passed out in 2019, so it's been about 4 years of running the company. And so far we've raised about $2 million out of funding, and we're just in the process of scaling our company right now. So that's where we are at. And in terms of problems that we're facing, there are quite a lot. I have a lot to say. So
Hi, this is Manish from Flow Mobility. So we also build autonomous navigation systems. We started 3 years ago with a vision of building a camera-based autonomy platform. That is how we started. We were not very clear on what would be the use case, who will be our first adapters, but we were fully convinced on the potential that a camera or a vision-based autonomy can bring. And we are also completely convinced on adoption of autonomous navigation as a technology itself, right? There's been a lot of work has been happening on this since last maybe 10, 15 years. Tesla, Waymo, but we realize that this next 8 to 10 years is where autonomy will become mainstream, robotics will become mainstream, massive adoption which will happen. So with that conviction, we started Flow Mobility, built it out. Our approach was quite different. We didn't really wait for the product to be built out completely. we started finding use cases based on whatever level of maturity the product was, and did some pilots in micromobility. We moved to a lot of work we did in agriculture. Then we moved to lawnmower. Some of you would have seen it on our stall in the event. Everywhere there were a lot of learnings, but again we had a way to validate whether this use case is what we should double down on, which was basically how engaged is customer on your problem statement and the solution that you're providing, right? And that validation we got in construction almost a year back. So like first 1.5, 2 years was pure building and doing POCs. Now we are building a material movement robot for construction industry, which is used to move material at large construction sites. So that is what we do last 3 years, team of 15 people. We do the entire thing end to end, right from designing the robot to embedded systems, power electronics, as well as the software layer on top of it. I think, yeah, that's about it.
Pranshu.
Yeah, hello everyone, this is Pranshu. I am co-founder of Rigbital Labs. So Rigbital Labs is majorly a service-based company. We help product companies, we help MNCs build robot platforms and prototypes for them. So we have been functional since last 3 years. We started back in 2020. We started with software services for robots. So we started building robot simulation softwares, making autonomous navigation path planning algorithms for some companies. And then we entered into hardware like 2 years ago. And apart from that, now we are building platforms for a lot of many companies. So we are not product companies like them. We build it for other companies. And apart from that, we very much like sharing our content. So that is why we open sourced a lot of things. So you might have seen Tortoise Bot and stuff like that. We truly believe that the more people have access to ROS, have access to robots, so the more the community will grow. And that's the reason we also open source things. We host some educational programs in institutes, universities about ROS. We take training programs. But yeah, again, we are not an education company. We just do it so that we can give back to the community. We have learned from open source. We want to contribute back to the open source. So yeah, that is it.
Thank you. And I also introduce myself. So my name is Pratik. So I started a company called Techno Yantra in 2019. It was a service-based company. We have been running for 3 years, did over 15 projects all over the world. And then last year, we came in contact with Victor, who is the founder of Acceleration Robotics, and we saw synergy in what his goals were with the company and what we also wanted to do. And so we decided to work together towards the common goal of hardware acceleration. And that's how then we merged with Acceleration Robotics, and now we are a part of Acceleration Robotics. So that's a quick intro, I think, about all of us. So I'll start with the first question is, as the discussion is about, what are the challenges that you have faced? And I know if we ask Pranav, he'll take up the whole session for it. So we'll stick to a couple of challenges everyone can talk about.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, like Pratik said, is our conversations are always like that. But yeah, we have a lot of challenges. I think generally running so the layer is like running any company is usually hard. But I think with a robotics company, you have the added baggage of building the hardware, figuring out the technology, and all of that. So I think our major challenges have definitely been during our initial days was getting good access to hardware, right? Like because of capital and the unavailability of capital and trying to be one of those companies that can be eligible for the capital, right? Like you guys heard the VC talk yesterday, like how do you exactly make yourself eligible to have that capital, right? So that was a huge challenge for us. And India as a market, like when we look at our competitors out of China or out of the US, companies in the US are probably getting a $5 million seed check, right? Whereas most of us have to probably grind for about 2-3 years for us to be able to get to that level. And if you look at China, the hardware ecosystem is so far superior that whatever maybe all of us will have to wait for 3 to 4 weeks to get our hands on, they're probably getting their hands on it like how some of us get hands on mobile phones, right? So that way, I think access to hardware has been a huge challenge. And the second one, definitely, and the primary contributing factor, or let's say something that will help us grow faster, is access to great talent, right? In India, I think thanks to a lot of efforts, like how Pranshu said, like ROSCon and the things that a lot of the other companies have been doing, there's a good community brewing, and there's a good bunch of talent that is coming up. But I think when we started in 2019, even ROS1 was relatively new. I think there was a huge spike during COVID when a lot of us were practically jobless at home. And that is when I think a lot of us picked up ROS, and we're now able to see a lot of that change happening, and a lot of, I think basically a lot of contributors to the community from India has been accelerating over the last like 5-6 years, and I think that is starting to show. But initially we struggled a lot with that, and good access to good talent is still, I think, a huge challenge for us. Yeah.
Manish.
So yeah, I think top two challenges Pranav has already talked about, funds and talent, right? Which I think is there in every business, more so in hardware, more so in deep tech, more so in India, right? Having said that, apart from those two, I think for us, let's say if I talk about deep tech companies in general, right? When we build a product, right? There's a challenge on product side, there's a challenges on business side, right? The challenges on product side are something which you have to map very, very carefully, right? And for us, I think that is where we did a lot of innovation, and eventually we found a solution, but it was very challenging for us. How do we approach the problem in such a manner that we get the validation very quickly? Because as I said, right, we started as a platform. We don't know what use case will manifest best for this platform. So the biggest challenge for us was, how do I get to the use case which can give me a good threshold for us to build the foundation and then go for the building the product line further. And I think that was a significant challenge for us, because we were very clear from the beginning that we are not here to build a product, we are here to build a business, right? And business means somebody who is willing to pay for your product and willing to pay enough for your product for you to make money, right? And that I think is a big challenge, specifically in a country where we have the adoption of the product that we have, robots, right, is not very high, right? And then you add supply chain into the mix, you add the product life cycle, the product iteration life cycle, right? Software, you get a bug, you make a release, maybe within 3-4 days you can actually release the next version. In hardware you cannot do that, right? So combining these 2-3 things into the mix, that probably is something which was most challenging thing for us, in terms of how do you iterate fast, get to the target use case fast so that you can double down on that, and at the same time keep building, right? And in deep tech, by definition, you are building something which has a research component, right? Or the variable component. It's not that you are getting the requirements and you're building a software, right? There are some unknown problems that you're working on for which you don't even know how you will solve them when you actually start them, right? So it's not a completely predictive way of doing things. There's a lot of probability at play, right? Whether this will work, that will work, not work, right? So balancing that out, right? How much effort should I put on keep pushing this particular thing, so that's one fine day I'll be able to integrate that into my product, and my product will suddenly go 2 notches higher, versus go traditional way, do classical model, take a classical model, train it, and just keep using it. It will be good enough for some time, right? Balancing this. I think that if I can put a abstract layer on top of it, was the biggest challenge for us on the approach that you take to build this out. Apart from talent, apart from ability to build product faster, apart from supply chains, of course.
Pranshu.
So the biggest problem that we faced, funds was never an issue, because as I said, we started as a software company. So it was just 3 of us co-founders working on robot software. We just had our own laptops. We started using those as the tool, and we didn't take salary at the beginning. So it was all okay. Whatever came into the company, we just invested back into the company. But the challenge that we faced was, there was not enough talent. Okay, so as we are software companies, we are just 3 co-founders. We can only handle a certain number of projects. But there were many projects coming in, but we were not capable enough to do all of those together. So the biggest challenge that we found was the talent. It was very difficult to find good talent who knows ROS, who can develop softwares, quality software, I must say. So what we did was, basically we knew what is going into the industry. We knew how to build the software. So we started this education program since then, which is when we started the ROS mentorship program, when students can come in, and instead of teaching them right from basics, it was not for K-12 students, which was going on trending in 2020. It was more on 3rd year, 4th year engineering students, where they can come in, and we taught them very industrial approach, like what is going on, how to implement navigation, which was important for us. And we acquired talent from those students itself. And now I guess we have a pretty much very strong team. And yeah, that was the biggest problem, finding talent. And again, that is another reason why I want to keep doing events like ROSCon, is so that students can see what is happening into industry. Flow Mobility has been doing awesome work in vision-based navigation. Accio Robotics is into warehouse automation. So guys, please learn from these people, understand what actually do you need into industry, so that we can actually hire you right after your college.
I think the problems that they are facing are pretty common. I think most of the startups or even the bigger companies in robotics face these problems. I want to add on to that from another point of view, is from the open source community and the open source ecosystem in India. So from what we have observed is it is lacking quite a bit, and that is why the reason of starting ROSCon. So if you think from open source point of view, startups can only do up to a level. The startups here lack funds. They're already overdoing things, and if you expect them to contribute to open source and keep doing that, it's going to stop at a certain point. It's the big companies in India. I don't know how many people are here from the earlier panels, but the big companies like the Infosys and the other TCS, Wipro guys are here. Like companies like this should be the one at the forefront of open sourcing some tech in India, because they have lots of funds. They are doing a lot of research. So if you contribute that back to the community, that is what is going to help build the community, and then startups like us can push that further. But if you expect a set of startups to just contribute to open source and the community would build that way, that's not going to happen. And if you see abroad, this there are bigger companies like Bosch is a big contributor to open source in Germany. In US, there are a lot of big companies doing that, but in India, there's hardly any. And the other point is also from the academia side. Like for ROSCon, we were surprised there were hardly any submissions from the universities for talks. The most of the talks that you again saw were startups and a few other companies. So you can't expect the robotics ecosystem to grow without the support of the big companies and the academia. So I think there needs to be a big push in those two aspects for the robotics ecosystem to grow.
Pratik, I just want to take 2 minutes to,
Yeah, sure.
I think all of us have mentioned this again and again, the lack of talent. I just want to double click a little bit on what we mean by that, because I don't want that to be an ambiguous takeaway from here, right? So guys, I mean, this might I'm probably going to be a bit extra honest. The thing is here, so say at Accio, I'll talk about only Accio. We like to think about things a lot from the first principle, right? In terms of actually questioning why something is happening in a particular way. Like say if you're using EKF, for example, why EKF and why not like something else? How does EKF work, right? I feel like the simple metric for that is the day all of us stop rejoicing creating an autonomous mobile robot using the AMCL package and G mapping and all of that and posting it online and having fun, is when we would probably stop complaining about access to talent. Because not a lot of people, I think there is a lot of early sense of gratification when you use ROS packages and build stuff out without exactly understanding how that works. And all that breaks in industry, like all that breaks in your warehouses, all that breaks in any kind of place that you want to build it out. You need to do your tweaks. You need to understand exactly if there is a semicolon, why that semicolon is there, right? Why is C++ better than Python, right? All this has to be very clear in terms of the whole value chain of learning. You're going through your robotics journey, which is, we find this across the border, like be it hardware, be it software. Software people think, okay, we've done with ROS, we know all the packages, I've done this simulation of an AMR on Gazebo. That barely cuts it. Like now we are at a level where I think all of us here would have probably done that at some point in our lives, right? And now when we actually want to filter, we want those people who can understand that, okay, this is how that whole matrix is panning out. If I want to run a sensor fusion algorithm, why can't I fuse different kinds of sensor? What's going to be the problem? What weightage do I give? Like these are the questions we want people answering. We don't want people just fusing sensors and doing something, right? So that is one thing. And when you look at hardware, people who exactly understand if there is a particular diode, what is the purpose? If I'm using a PLC, why am I using a PLC? If I'm using Arduino, why not why doesn't an industrial robot use an Arduino? All of you would have built robots with Arduino. All of you would have built robots with Raspberry Pi. What is it that makes an Arduino not as reliable as any other industrial controller? I think what is lacking in India is people asking these questions, right? People asking these questions and finding those answers while at college, because college is that perfect safe spot for you to find those answers where your deadlines are not as hectic. It's not make or break. Like say, if we don't have those answers right now when we're building our robots, we lose contracts worth lakhs of rupees or crores in some cases, right? We don't have that option. So in colleges, the more questions we're asking, right, the more answers we find, and that is when I think we will stop complaining about access to talent. And that's what we also missed. We just went through like a huge recruitment drive right now. That was a major lag that we also saw in most people, right? Like many people, we had robotic software engineering roles and all of that. Many people knew what ROS is. Many people had built an AMR, but that doesn't cut it, right? So I think, yeah, clarity. I just wanted to double click on that. This is what we mean by access to talent. People who exactly understand robotics, like understand what is someone who's gone through probability theory and then building an autonomous mobile robot is like way easier to work with than someone who says EKF exists or this exists, right? So that's what we're talking about, yeah.
Would you like to add anything about like what you want to see in talent? Like one thing he's already mentioned.
No, I think bang on what Pranav said, right? Ability to build versus ability to package it so that it can solve a business problem, right? I think if I can, again, very abstract way of saying things, right? That building at a surface is easy, right? But depth of knowledge is where the real disruption always happens, right? And there's no end to it, right? There's so much depth in sensors itself. There's so much depth in building the algos itself, right? And you need not like as Pranav said, right? It's not that you have to build the entire algo by yourself, right? But you should be asking those questions. Why this, right? That curiosity is required. So depth of knowledge, ability for us to build something which has a application, right? Ability for us to package that. I think that probably is a gap that we keep talking about, the so-called skilled gap or employability gap across the industries, more so in hardware, because it's not something which comes very naturally to us. So yeah, that's how I would put it.
To add on to that, another thing like I would like to see in the talent is the art of debugging. So most of the robotic companies in India are system integrators. There are very few companies who are actually doing the development of the whole stack. So when you're doing systems integration, you need to have hands-on experience with a lot of stuff. You need to be jack of all trades. And like I have a team, and I'm definitely not the best robotics engineer or software engineer in my team. Only thing that I'm better at is I've seen a lot of problems and I've seen how they have been solved. So unless you have that hands-on experience, you're not going to be able to solve a new problem. So you need to have that knowledge, you need to have that clarity, you need to ask these questions, but you need to have a good hands-on experience. You develop a AMR robot, AMR simulation, just try implementing a different planner, see what problems you face. So the problems that you face that time are the ones that are going to add the skill that is needed in the industry. So that is also something that I want to add on, which is important.
With the mentorship program, now I can be hired as a robotics engineer. It's not that way, guys. So fun fact, all the people, like some of the people that graduated from our mentorship program have worked with Accio, have worked with Flow Mobility, has worked with acceleration. So what did those guys did different was, even after the mentorship program, that was the first step to understand the basics. How can you get started? Then they built upon it, okay? So a person started 100 days of ROS series on LinkedIn. He kept on learning new things, he kept on sharing. And that is how I guess Flow Mobility found him. I won't mention their names, okay? But yeah, there was one intern that at the very beginning time when we were not even able to pay interns, we were just giving them goodies and stuff like that for 1 month internship. That time a person came to me, he was like, okay, you have built tortoise bot, but I can build applications over it. I was like, great, tell me what you can do. So he did object following things, he made wall following things, and now he's working at Acceleration Robotics. I'm very proud of these people because those don't just stop at mentorship program. They keep on experimenting. So even your college life, after your college curriculum, it's not the end. It's just the start. You have to experiment on yourself. Even with Accio Robotics, the guy learned cartographer from us, and now he started with the first implementation of Accio Robotics. So I was very proud of that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that Prancho made. So I think we can open up to questions. So we want this to be an interactive end to our
Hey guys,
ROSCon. So
may I? Guys, hello. Oh,
Yeah, hi. So I'm someone who has completed a mentorship program from Rigbitel. So I'm currently doing the ROS2 thing. But that point is very correct. Like why after you have done that, go and build something. So I think with respect to the talent pool, which has been a recurring point amongst the panelists, is that certainly we have lacked the academic outreach. With respect to a lot of other projects related to robotics. So in my university, we've had a lot of projects in electronics department that are like maybe grid maintenance, high energy transfers and all of that. And we've also had equipment, but that's not the case with robotics, right? All we've had were some Raspberry Pis and some sensors. So I think one thing is that if we can reduce the cost of, let's say, dev kits or those courses, and then maybe create a long-term collaboration with academics, like we've had some Google developer groups, which I was part of at my university. If we, like a bunch of you guys can collaborate on that and reach out to academia, especially the new universities. So I think then we can really address the talent point, because a lot of things that's come in robotics, they're not really a part of curriculum as general. You'll have your basic engineering branches. It's not a lot of mechatronics or control algorithms or a lot of that stuff. So I think that could be one point on which you guys can figure out in your free time.
So one thing, as last word, free time. Okay, so as Pratik said, we as startups, we do not have free time. Okay, it's the responsibility of big companies, Qualcomm, Nvidia. These are already communicating with colleges, setting up Nvidia GPU labs and stuff like that. Okay, what we can do at Max is like what we did with Tortoise Board. Okay, we know we brought down all the basic components. We brought the price as low as possible. But again, it's affordable, but yet it's not like you can buy tens and thousands of those and give it to colleges. We cannot do that. So here comes big players like Nvidia, Qualcomm, and all the sponsors at ROSCon, Art Park as well. Yeah, so they could, communicate with these colleges. Okay, and if not, as Pratik already said, these companies have money. Okay, so they can build these robots for those colleges, and you can get access to those hardware. So that can be a one point. So again, it's very hard as a startup to survive as well as to give. Okay, so yeah.
No, I think that way, I'm already very surprised of the price of Tortoise, but I don't know how it's so low. Like I don't know, like there's some back end dealing already happening there. But the thing is, you can't fight with the laws of physics. Like semiconductor, if you take a Raspberry Pi, it costs that much for the silicon. It costs that much for. So I think. So other thing, right? It also depends on what is the focus you're achieving from the dev kit. Like if you're talking about software, I don't think dev kits play as important a role as contrary to like hardware. So for example, we saw a bunch of simulation based talks and all of that, right? I think people just understanding those simulations and like understanding how of course the real world, if you're talking about students without resources, right? I'm just addressing that. The best way is to implement it real world. But with the amount of open source software already available, if a person, like I said, if a person is able to understand different kinds of control, if I'm looking at control system, so I've been surprised when people take for granted that if you give a motor 255 PWM, it works at 255 PWM. It doesn't work at 255 PWM. People don't know that, right? This doesn't need a dev kit. This ideally just requires you understanding physics. This requires you questioning that if I'm giving a velocity, that happens or does not happen, right? Because and simulation environments help with that. You can learn your MPC controller, you can learn your PID tuning, you can learn whatever things you want. And I think software that solves. Now with hardware specifically, I think India is at a point where we should all be against dev kits, because it's giving a very false sense of validation in terms of building your projects. And I think people should start like looking more into building reliable, like now so if we talk about AI, how does AI disrupt the robotics industry? AI disrupts the robotics industry this way. AI gives access to students and people to build out projects that say all of us started building out in 2016-17 with much more ease. Like you want an architecture for a robot, you go put it on GPT, you're getting the architecture. But now the job is you actually implement that architecture. We were just happy cracking the architecture back then. Now it's about implementing that architecture. So I think dev kits are kind of counterintuitive there. Like for hardware, I would probably strongly advise against dev kits and look for like, if you're an embedded firmware developer, you take like the off-the-shelf proper STM rather than using an Arduino coding on the IDE and then learn how to work with that, right? Or I think subsystem wise it varies, but there are workarounds around the dev kit problem right now, I feel, and most dev kits without taking names, barring the ones sold abroad, I think in India you have like very competitive price. I don't think you can go lower than that unless bigger companies come in, procure in bulk, and really, drive the price down, right? So yeah.
Hello. Hello. Here.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Meenakshi. So I am a research scholar here in IIC. So one of the points that you said about, not having enough talent, and that is into your, startups. But that's not the case. I work in this, research as a researcher in IIC. And when we go for looking for interns for our project, we have seen there is this recent dip in quality of talent that we see. Like, and I'm not just talking about private colleges. They are like big players, IIT students and IT students. They can say that, yes, they know ROS, but then when you ask them about how a microcontroller works, they cannot tell you. They cannot tell you the basic fundamentals that they should know when they are doing their BTech degrees. So I was just wondering, is there some way that the academic institutes need to adapt to this new, requirement of talents of engineers that we have? Because previously, the only thing that only BTech graduate needed was just to know a good programming. They didn't really, if you are an EC graduate, you're a mechanical science graduate, all they wanted to do is be a good programmer, C++, then you get a job in IT. But that's not the case. The landscape is changing in India. So how do you think that the Indian educational institutes should adapt to this new requirement of talent and push the students that they do not get trapped into this local minima that, oh, I know this, I just got this code from the internet and I got a good grade and that's it. So that doesn't cut. Even for a research, if we want to do cutting edge research, we need good talented people for that. So thank you.
So addressing that point, so there have been many colleges. It were big colleges, IITs, BITS. Okay, these colleges come to us and they say, okay, host a 7-day ROS workshop. How can we teach ROS in 7 days? Just you tell me. Okay, it's not possible to teach 7 days. Even the mentorship program lasts for 2 months, and still we have to break it down little by little. We cannot cover each and everything. So what colleges can do is, instead of having projects just in final year, they can start right from first year. First year, their brain is very fresh. They are very keen in learning. They can teach them basic. Obviously, C is already there in the course, C language, but still they should know at least hardware in first year. Like they can learn about Arduino in first year. And by the end of the first year itself, they should complete the Arduino. I've went to colleges and there are final year students doing projects on Arduino. It's not fair over there. So first year students should work with Arduino. Second year on, you can go into the more depth that why Arduino, what is STM32 now. There are FPGA boards. So use of FPGA boards, how they can be used. So all these things, they should be get covered into second year. And then the higher end, the higher level things like CUDA software, ROS can be in the third year. And the final year can be implementation of all of those. So that is one thing.
Yeah, I think there needs to be more discussion with the industry on what they need, because right now, like you said, it's a very standard syllabus which hasn't been changed in years. Now I think the skilling department here is working towards changes, but there are very few institutes in India trying to do that. So unless you have dialogue with the industry on what you actually need, okay, ROS is just one thing. So what they will do is, okay, they'll have one chapter on ROS and expect, oh, we have ROS in our syllabus, but that's not how it works. There needs to be at least some simulation project. Okay, like we know there's not access to hardware and we can't solve for that. At least in simulation, in the labs, they should have some projects which are defined by the industry. It shouldn't again be, okay, Turtlebot is there, it's moving around. That is okay for learners, but like fourth year students, if they are learning ROS from 2 years, we don't expect them to be just knowing that. They need to have some substantial implementation of the knowledge that they have used in some kind of a project. So I think the dialogue needs to increase with the industry on what the requirements are to fix at least some modules which can then help. So I think that's one way of doing it.
Yeah, so I don't like my point of view is I don't think it's just about the universities. So honestly, yeah, in India there are very few. I think IISc is probably a front runner in terms of robotics research, at least whatever I've seen so far. But I don't think it's only on the universities, because Indian education system is primarily built in a way to make sure everyone is able to at least reach an average level, and it is not catered to probably help the extra curricular. I mean, the people that want to push the boundaries. It's not designed for that. For example, something would be having, say, extra credits or grades for deep research projects that we do, right? So, for example, that's something that we really struggle with. We had to work on our projects probably after classes. So you're basically juggling classes and juggling your robotics that is your passion, and that's very tedious, right? It takes a toll. And so I don't think it's but there, when you look at it from the perspective of the university, right? They want to ensure there are also going to be a lot of students that are cutting corners. There are going to be a lot of students that are going to find loopholes in such an open system, and that will also create a problem where then you're basically going, probably the standard of the industry, I mean the university as a whole is probably like dropping than what they would like. There is rankings, there is the bureaucracy that you still have to go through in a capitalistic world. You can't fight that as well. So I think the balance, it also has to come from students where don't just pick engineering because it's engineering. I think that is gone. Like those jobs don't exist as much as they used to probably 10 years back. So that is, I think, definitely one thing. Students really being curious about why does this thing, how does this thing work, and this is why I want to learn. I think it comes from a bit students as well. I think automatically things will change. Like students are very happy with a low impact factor research paper, right? And the university obviously has to keep their name. They're running an institute, so they also need to deal with, yeah, we want this amount of research activity, but that doesn't cut it, right? And I think students also taking work pride in their work, that yeah, I'm going to do some related work, and not just because I want to just publish a research paper for my resume. Like students should stop building for their resume. I think if that happens, universities will start things will start growing, because there is money. Like I know for a fact universities have enough money to have those, let's say, top 10 to 15% students who are really interested in robotics to capture to understand robotics exactly. But then sometimes they have to find that middle ground because of this problem. So I think it's both ways. Students have to stop filling up their resume. Universities have to probably start looking at more futuristic stuff, and we'll find a middle ground somewhere. And for startups like us, the major problem with we're trying, like, actually at least as we are growing, we're really trying consciously to start engaging with academic to be able to some long-term projects that we have, which we want some deep research to happen and be able to mentor students. But I think that's like we had addressed the previous point, that is something very time-consuming for us and takes up a lot of things. But I think in the next 3-4 years, I hope this is changing definitely. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think, so I call it a learning flywheel, right? I think we have seen that manifested in software industry, how India became a software hub, right? So all the three things have to come together, right? There's academia, there is a startup or a industry who is embracing that, and there's a technology change which is happening, and all three of them tie to each other, right? And there's a spiral which is formed, right? So I think we already see the seeds of that spiral getting formed in robotics in India, right? So I think we are not just like cribbing about talent. I think there's enough talent. It's not that we are saying that there's like we are at a very early stage. We have been able to build what we have built using talent which is there here. It is there. We see the early seeds, but just that probably we are coming from a point of view that we need to chase excellence. It's not that we should be satisfied with what we have. Chase excellence, and we see the early signs of this flywheel already there, right? There's a collaboration happening between industry and academia. There's a collaboration happening in terms of doing research papers with practical applications. We already see that, right? Just that we have to keep doing more of this, keep doing more of this more rigorously, keep doing more of this more rigorously with more depth, right? And we will be there. I already see the signs.
Yeah, I think competitions is also another part. So like IIT Bombay or Yantra, I think there's some guys here. That has been a massive help in propagating ROS in the Indian robotics ecosystem. Because like the resumes that we receive, you'll find 80% students have learned ROS from this Yantra competition. But the problem we face is they just stop there. What's after that? So what we are looking for, okay, you learned that ROS there, that's great. But what did you do after that? So, but in one way, competitions is a good way of making people learn better. So,
Hey guys, sorry. Thank you for the ROS event. It was really nice and good insight as well. I have just two questions. I believe most of the panelists know me. So for the first one is, you guys just mentioned that there was this drive where you hired the engineers, right? Were the engineers robotics engineers or software and mechanical? And the second part is, before this panel, there was a panel we discussed about making there's no point of making the wheel again. What about copying the wheel? I believe that's how the China market surpasses US right now. Do you guys have any comment on that? I believe.
Yeah, so the first one was about robotics software. I think the lookout is for robotic software engineers, but because of how it is probably difficult to find those cream layer of engineers, that's the whole talent problem that we were addressing, right? So it was for robotic software engineers. But yeah, and about reinventing the wheel, I think it's a balance.
It was like,
Huh?
should we copy the wheel?
No,
Instead
I don't
of-
think I don't think we should be copying the wheel, but I think it's probably a balance between what is going to help you exist and what is going to help you probably scale your company first before you probably reinvent the wheel. So, for example, mobile robots, right? There is a limited number of ways or configurations you can build a mobile robot in with limited resources. So, I don't think there's a 1 or 0 answer to that. It's a answer that is suited to a particular, I would say, situation of a company or an organization. But yeah, and I don't believe the China market like went with just copying wheels. I think it's built on the backs of a lot of people. Blood, sweat, and tears.
actually give numbers on that. So
Yeah.
if any one of you can Google Ovo Robotics from China, it's the same copy as you are. 53% market share in industrial robots. That's more than actually half of India's GDP. So I believe copying the wheel does work.
It's not that straightforward. Like, even if we try, we are not going to be able to copy them as good as China has done, because they have a whole ecosystem which supports that. They have the local ecosystem in hardware. Like he was mentioning how difficult it is to build hardware system in India. I don't mind copying, like what China is doing is right, but we don't have the local ecosystem to support that, to do it with the efficiency and the quality that they are doing. So I think that's the problem in India. And
Okay, this is one question that I got from a lot of people. Okay, so I want to be clear over here. A lot of people came to our stall. They said, okay, TortoiseBot, it's copy of TurtleBot. Okay, true. But if you go deep inside it, okay, we are definitely inspired by the design. Okay, there is a difference between getting inspiration. There is a difference between getting copied. Okay, so the design exactly looks same, but the reason behind it was everybody was using TurtleBot into universities, but they were not able to get more than one TurtleBot per university. So the reason we kept the design exactly same is researchers have tuned those PID parameters to work on that robot. The wheel separation, the weight, we kept exactly the same so that we can get the same PID tune parameters work on TortoiseBot. So okay, we copied it, but it was for a good reason. The other thing that we did was, even if you go to the TurtleBot 4 repository, there are so many problems going on over there. Okay, Open Robotics and ClearPath team are already working on it, but due to recent acquisition of ClearPath by Rockwell, they are not able to give enough time to the education side. They are just giving more time to the industrial automation side. So there comes where we are going through each and every issue of TurtleBot on their GitHub, and we are trying to solve those problems on our TortoiseBot. So here, though we are copying, though we are keeping the design same, but we are trying to build better products so that it is better for Indian community, it's better, it's more accessible, it's more user-friendly or something in that case. And also, addressing your first question, was it robotics engineers or was it these engineers? So definitely our initial set of engineers were core mechanical, electronics and those things. Now they are robotics engineers. But here I would like to address one thing. Even though these are robotics engineers, these are from private colleges, okay? Quality do matter over there.
But I think IT also have robotics, I believe.
Yeah, so I would like if Indian colleges, IITs, IISCs, they can introduce robotics engineering as the bachelor's degree rather than a master's degree.
It is a bachelor's degree in IT.
Yeah, so if even they are introduced in the very early stage, it's better.
So I think very quick response. First one, we have people across the board, so mechanical, embedded, as well as software. In our experience, mechatronics, for example, best of both worlds. In our experience, people who have a view of across domains are the ones who have been able to deliver maximum value in robotics, right? Somebody who understands, who's good at software, but also understands embedded and mechanical, and vice versa, right? So that is the first question. And I think more and more it will become more useful, more evident that cross-domain expertise is what will build good robotics companies, in my view. Second one, this is a subject very close to my heart, and we keep debating on this. Like, why do you copy something, first of all, right? So, is Flipkart a copy of Amazon? Is Ola a copy of Uber, right? What is the meaning of being copying, right? Copy means there is something which is validated. There's a business pain point which is established. Somebody has built a business on it, and hence now I am copying that model into a new geography with a new flavor, right? Like, let's say, for example, China doesn't copy things. They copy at scale. Copy is not what they're good at. They are good at copying it at scale to disrupt the entire market, right? So that's what. It's not just a black and white that I saw something and I'm copying it, right? There is always a value add which happens, and if there's a value add which is coming out in a meaningful outcome in form of a product or a business, just go for it. Don't even think twice that I'm copying or something, right? It's not necessary that you have to always innovate from scratch, right? And it's not this or that, right? It's not that we have to only innovate or we have to only copy, right? So I'll just share a quick anecdote. I had a good fortune of meeting Mr. Mukesh Ambani. So in that half an hour, 45-minute session, this one thing he said, which has stayed with me for a while. He said, Reliance is not one of the most innovative companies. We don't aspire to be. We don't want to be innovative companies, and it was shocking for us to hear something from him like this, right? That, okay, this is like Mukesh Ambani. He should say innovation, right? He said, no, we believe that we will outclass everybody on execution. We will be last ones to enter the market, and telecom is a good example. They were the last ones to enter the market, but they did an amazing job of it. They were the last ones, or maybe late enter into retail. They did an amazing job of it, right? So I think look at it from that lens, right? If you feel something which is good out there, which can add value, and you can add your own unique flavor to it, just go for it, right? It's not, don't put this label on it that I'm copying something, right? Having said that, it's not that you should not innovate. Innovation is where, if you think that you can design a wheel which can give better output than what wheel is there today, definitely reinvent the wheel. But otherwise, what's the point? Make a new metal, change the metal of the wheel, change the form factor, right? But rotation is what you need. Just copy the wheel. So that's how I would put a perspective on this question on, should I just copy or should I just innovate?
Thank you guys. Okay, I think we have time for one last question. Yeah. Okay, we'll finish with you.
We'll take one.
So, I remembered when you talked about Ambani, there is this quote from this very famous computer pioneer. He's not computer engineer, Seymour Cray, founder of Cray. So, he said that he doesn't like to be a pioneer. He wants to learn from others' mistakes, right? Also, the word copying is kind of, triggering a lot of alarm bells in my head, because I just conducted an exam right now and all of my students got very good grades. So I was just wondering, when you are, I like the word inspiration better, so I prefer that. But what about IP, right? Because when you're, is that something you should not, shouldn't you be watching out for? Whether are you trampling on someone else's IP, or do you think that at this point you don't worry because you don't have time or bandwidth to look into it, but then maybe it can come and bite you later on? What is your thought and how do you approach it?
Yes, so I think IP is definitely a huge concern. So off late, Veros Robotics is a place where there's a lot of lawsuits being thrown around because of Okada having AutoStore and lot of lawsuits going on. So IP is definitely a huge factor to consider. But that is where now, what our approach has always been, because we don't have probably the time and bandwidth, it's always been to defend ourselves, then protect something that we build. So it's more about how do you create a ring of defense so that no one is able to probably claim that no, you copied something else. And we'll have to be honest about this. By honest, what do I mean? We are a bunch of, let's say, 30 odd people with just maybe around close to $2 million in the bank account, trying to build something innovative in robotics, which is a 15-year-old industry, or at least, and first AGVs have like the first patents of AGVs are in 90s, I think 92, 90 was the first patent of an AGV. So that old industry, it's such an old industry that now if I come and say that, yeah, a bunch of 30 of us are going to probably disrupt the robotics market like never before, I would say that I mean, I don't think we are capable of that, and we're probably being delusional at that point that we are going to be able to do that with our resources, right? In the warehouse robotics space, which is a very old space. So then we'll have to really build up to that. So now our focus is more about how do you protect how do you protect ourselves from someone claiming that this is overlapping, rather than saying that, yeah, we've built something completely new, right? So, and yeah, even that being said, so in mobile robotics, probably there are only about 2 other companies that have the same robots, the same kind of robots that we have, even though like generally there are a lot more companies going on for mobile robotics. But so I think identifying that it's a balance, again, that's why I said it's a balance between reinventing the wheel and finding that spot with the customer. So why we are not probably going to be too focused on IP is robotics as a whole itself is such a small penetrated market, lowly penetrated to, let's say, to draw parallels. In India, we have 300 million automobiles. Globally, the biggest fleet of robots is Amazon, and that is 300,000 robots, that's all. And after that, you're probably looking at like 2,000 robots to any other. So it's a very small market where penetration is so low that even right now, I'm not going to, if I go and sell in a geography, let's say in APAC, I'm not trampling anyone's IP, I'm not trampling anyone's revenue, no one is even caring. Because that's how large the market is, and that's how small the number of startups are, or the scale of robotics is. So even though probably all of us are here in the robotics field, we're probably thinking about 24/7, so it seems very large, but we are still very nascent, and actually I would say kind of at a noob phase at this point, and there's still like a lot for us to learn from the automobile industry and other like the telecom and like semiconductor industry, right? So I think that way, I don't think robotics industry is there yet. A lot of contributions have to happen to places like open source for us to come to a point to say that, oh, I have a technology that no one else has and no one else can copy it at all. Because I think the only place in deep tech you can say that at this point is probably with rockets. Like, okay, there's a company building 3D printed rockets, there's a company using probably solid state combustion for fuel and all of that. So I think in India, generally, I don't see a lot of, in the next 3-4 years, I don't see a lot of IP as such being built in robotics that is not already existing. So I think it'll be more about protecting yourself than saying that I think a lot of capital is needed. Like you look at company like Boston Dynamics, they just get thrown around for $1 billion here and there. So that's the amount of capital they're playing with, right? So I think, yeah, that's my take to it, yeah.
Yeah, I think just be aware of your IP, but don't be fixated on it, because then that will be a problem. So I think that's the best we can do at this moment. So we'll take the last question, yeah.
Hello, I'm Kishore. I'm a final year student of PhD College of Technology, Coimbatore. So I belong to the robotics and automation department. So you guys are mentioning that you can't find the right hand, that creamy layer of the thing. So I believe that as a part of robotics and automation department, we have such a proper curriculum for robotics. We learn from the basics of what is the mathematical approach to everything. We have proper courses like dynamics and control of manipulators, where we learn from everything, what is a vector to how they are controlled and how they are simulated. And for mobile robotics, we learn from what is a global frame, what is a local frame, everything in a mathematical approach. Then in laboratories, we make them appear in real robots and simulations. And we also had some hands-on experience on good industrial robots like UR5, Kinova, Kuka, Fanuc, Festos Robotino. So our students are like doing in both academic side and also in the project side. But they are ending up in big companies, IT companies. Let's say like some core companies include Caterpillar, Deloitte, Citibank. So they are ending up in IT companies, even though they possess some good projects and background in robotics. Even our seniors won the Outpock Innovation Challenge a couple of years ago. But still 1, 2 or 3 of them who were in the winning team still ended up in the companies which are irrelevant to robotics. So I see that there is a gap between the robotics startups and the students. Because when we are appearing for placements, in the placement list, we are seeing mostly IT companies and some big giants in robotics like ABB, Fanuc, Bosch, those things. But we are not seeing much robotics startup as much as the IT startup showing up for placements in our college. So, so what we students are doing, many people go for the money and go to IT jobs through the placements. People who are really passionate what they do, they appear to apply to the companies for internships, 8-semester internships off campus. They send their resume, send LinkedIn messages. Sometimes they are getting seen by the companies, sometimes they are not. So it's a gamble. So very few get into internships, convert them into full time, and build a robotic career out of them. But the majority who even possess some good skills in robotics still end up in IT sector and learn some new things there and being a normal programmer instead of being a robotist. So, so what should we do from our student side to bridge that gaps to bring the robotic startups to our college placements so that we can perform better and close that gap and contribute to the companies and the society and the nation also?
Firstly, I think you should have some water. It was a really, I could feel your troubles and the pain you are feeling about this. Like, I really like the passion with which you've asked this question. So that's really good to see. I think, does anybody want to?
So again, see, there is no silver bullet here that do this and problem is solved, right? But I think I was talking about that flywheel, right? In flywheel, how flywheels are built, right? The time when there's an inertia and flywheel will slow down, which means I'll take the example that you gave, right? There's a talent pool which is not getting higher. The flywheel is slowing down. Suddenly more companies will come and there is a push which will come and flywheel will start speeding up, right? So it happens gradually. There's no overnight way to change this, right? It's not that tomorrow I have 100,000 well-trained robotics engineers and there will be enough companies to hire them. It doesn't work like that. It's not also other way around, right? That I have 50 companies and I have like 10 people, right? So it feeds into itself, right? So we need more and more people who have a passion for this, who cross that threshold where a company who is hiring them can say, okay, looks like this is someone who can create value, right? Why would company not come for a placement? Because we don't know whether the value can be created or not, right? And startups generally don't do campus placements. So as I said, right, this is a journey, right? So a talent pool is there. There will be opportunities which will get created, right? And as I said, specifically in robotics, there are more and more use cases coming up. There are more applications coming up. So sooner or later you'll find that, right? And you have to continue on that, right? And it's on both the sides. The industry also need to make effort on how do I bridge the gap. Academia also need to make effort on how do we make sure that students are better prepared, right? And we also need to have these frameworks on if there is a talent that they should get access to the opportunities, right? So it's a pure complete ecosystem play, and it's happening. That's what I'm saying. It's happening for sure. For example, if you think that there is something that you have good profiles in your network, feel free to share with us. I'm sure there are enough and more opportunities in Bangalore itself. For you to follow your passion for sure.
Yeah, I think. No, so I think you've spoken very tirefully, so I'll give you more context to probably put you at more peace. So I think it's a combination of things. It's not just on what you guys have to do. It's not just what we have to do. So just let's look at the robotics market as a whole, right? Now you spoke about ABB, Fanuc, KUKA and all of that. So in India, the robotics market is very bipolar. By bipolar, what do I mean? You have ABB Fanuc and they have set up their operations here, not working on core robotics, probably more deployment oriented, more software, not working on building product, which is mostly happening in Europe, right? So that is the cream layer. So that is something that even when you guys go for placements, you need to be aware of that, right? What is the job description? That is layer one. Layer two is then you have like few companies like you have the gray oranges of the world and Adverb and companies that have enough scale to probably come and say, I'm going to recruit about 20 students from a campus placement, right? Then there's a huge void. Then there's companies like us, where we are just starting off. Like we are 3-4 years old, we are just hitting that inflection point. That's where this flywheel effect comes into play, right? Where we, even if we do have the capital, it would not be easy for us to go to multiple campuses and do the recruitment. That is where if you guys are very clear that only thing expectation from your side, you're very clear you want to do robotics, you'd have to reach out to us on LinkedIn or wait for our recruitment posts and all of that, because I don't think any of us in the near future, I would say for the next 1.5 to 2 years, I don't see a lot of robotics companies going for placements like a mass placement campaign to all colleges in the country, right? So that is probably going to take a while. So I think this is like probably the only way out. And most of us see, we like I said, because talent is a problem, we are constantly on the lookout for who's catching our eye. And there are like people, like we just scroll through, there are people that have those things. We reach out to them. We see that, okay, this person is trying to do something and we voluntarily reach out to them. So I think that way LinkedIn is a great place to reach out to us. But I don't think any of us is probably coming for a campus placement for the next couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with Pranav. Like, we are not coming for campus placement anytime soon. And talking about, as Sir said, it's a flywheel thing. So one thing I would like to include is like having patience. Okay, so even when I graduated from my college, I got a very good offer from an IT company who was starting up their robotics department. So obviously I would have to work on robotics, but I rejected that. I still have to hear from my parents about the same. Even running my own startup for 3 years, we are a good size company. Still, I'm not earning that much what that company offered me. But still, I am having the patience. I am considering this is the just starting point of the flywheel. I will earn enough in my complete life, so I don't have to worry about it. So if you guys are actually passionate, as you said, contact us. We are there, and as it's not logistically possible to go and find talent. If you think you are capable enough, communicate with us. If you are good, we'll hire you. If not, we'll also tell you that what are we lacking, so that you can improve on your side as well. And if you actually want campus placement, I guess Adverb Robotics is doing really good in India. So they are even doing mass hiring, I guess, in Delhi and other colleges. Yeah.
Short answer to you is like, go for internships right now, because none of us have the luxury to hire 5 people, 10 people like companies do, and then 3 or 4 people work out. We just don't have the time for that. What we have time for, okay, hiring some interns and converting them to full-time. That is the best way right now to get a job in a robotics company. So that's the short answer. Of course, you have a lot of detailed answers here, but the short answer is go for internships, try to get internships. That's the best way to get into a robotics company right now. I think, sorry, we'll have to close because we're already past time and they'll literally throw us out from here. So yeah, I think let's conclude the session for today. This was the last session. We have a quick closing remarks as well. So first, I'd like to thank you to Pranav, Manish and Pranshu, and thank you for being a great audience and asking some really good questions. So